Have you ever been in a situation in life where it seems like it is battering you, wave after wave, after wave, after wave, and you feel like you are dead? In the water, some of you are sinking. And listen to the words that David wrote. David was a poet in 2 Samuel 22, 5-7. He says this, "The waves of death overwhelmed me. The floods of destruction swept over me. The grave wrapped its ropes around me, and death laid a trap in my path." And so he takes his torment and he turns it into poetry. He turns it into a song, and he says, "The waves of death, they overwhelmed me. Floods of destruction, they swept over me. The grave wrapped its ropes around me. Death laid a trap in my path. But in my distress, I cried out to the Lord. Yes, I cried out to God for help." Why? Because even the toughest warriors fights battles he can't win. My cry reached his ears, and he reached down from heaven, and he rescued me, and he drew me out of the deep waters. Here's the good news. No matter how deep you are, no matter how far you've sunk, God can still reach you. You got to cry out. You got to call out. You got to say, "God, save me. God, save me. God, I need you." If the waves are overwhelming you, if the storm is too big, I want to remind you what Psalms 89 verse 9 says, "You rule the oceans." It's not you, it's God who rules the oceans. He's bigger than our storms. He's bigger, he's greater. It says, "You rule the oceans. You subdue their storm." Maybe you're in a storm, you didn't plan on it. It was completely unexpected, but you're in the middle of it, and you're wondering if you'll survive. Could be a physical storm. Maybe it's a relational storm with your spouse, your kids, your parents, or a friend. Maybe your financial boat is getting rocked by heavy waves. You're sinking deeper and deeper in that and wondering if you'll ever be able to get your head above water again. Maybe it's an emotional storm. For you, the storm is internal. You're fighting a battle no one else can see with depression, anxiety, or fear. You're in a storm. In Matthew chapter 8, the disciples found themselves in a literal storm. On the Sea of Galilee, we pick it up in verse 23, "Then Jesus got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake, so the waves swept over the boat." Now, before we even really start the story, I have to share with you an important fact. The disciples followed Jesus into that boat. If you go back to verse 18, you read this: "When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake." It was Jesus' plan. It was Jesus' idea to be in that boat, on that sea, at that time. This may be the most important thing you learn today. Storms come even when you're following Jesus. If you're in a storm and you're wondering where you went wrong, I want to encourage you. This storm doesn't necessarily mean you've missed something. Some storms are of your own making, but often storms come, even though you're following Jesus. Being a Christian never exempts you from a storm. Don't think that because you have a tough time, it's because you disobeyed God. The disciples got in this storm because they obeyed God. Jesus said, "Get in the boat." They got in the boat and sailed right into a storm. They were right in the center of the storm. That was God's will. So, when you're going through a tough time, do not automatically assume, "I must be out of the will of God," because you might be exactly where God wants you to be. Storms are impartial. These disciples were not out of the will of God. Why were they in the storm? They were in a storm. Don't miss this. They were in a storm because they were in the will of God. It was Jesus that constrained them to get into that boat. They were in this storm because they were obeying Jesus. Why would Jesus want them to be in a storm? He wanted them to grow. I want to ask you a question. Those of you who've been on the trail for a while, when did you grow the most? When everything was fine? When you were smoothly sailing, or when the storm came? Sometimes God allows very difficult situations in our life to grow us up. And I think that if God allows a storm in your life, that his ultimate purpose is to bring you out stronger. You will learn things in storms that you will never learn any other way. A calm sea never produced a good sailor. How would you like to go on the seas with a sailor who had never been on troubled seas? If you're going to have a good life, it means you're going to go through stuff, but the purpose of that stuff isn't to harm you. God allows it or causes it to grow you up, to grow me up. And the lesson is that Jesus can be trusted in the storms of life. And the only way you're ever going to prove that true is to go through them. That's if you've never had a problem, you'd never know God could solve them. It's God who is the master of the winds and the waves. He is the master of your storms. Listen to me carefully. Whenever you are in a storm, Jesus knows about it. He's close by, and he's waiting for you to ask for help. I'll never leave you, nor forsake you, is his promise. Think about that. Jesus has said to every one of us who are his children, I will never leave you, nor forsake you. You aren't alone. We do not walk this road alone. That's why we can say with confidence, you'll survive this storm. You will, because you're not alone. You belong to God. God has never promised a life with no problems, but God has promised to be there when we face them. But storms are temporary. They don't last. There are no eternal storms. Jay Bryan and a friend walked outside one day in a rainstorm. The friend said, "You think it'll stop?" He responded, "Storms don't last forever. It has an expired time. There is hope. God is with you. How long, O Lord? How long?" Have you ever asked that question? How long, O Lord, have you ever been there? You know what it's like to ask that question, you asking some version of it even now. And we are all too familiar with the waiting. But these storms in life is only for a season. They all have their expired time.